The dawn's mists swirled along the Vættrpath, chilling the teens to the bone. Their breath hissed in frosted clouds from their lips, and Rava fastened her fur cloak tighter. Lily shivered and brought her arms around herself, squeezing tightly. Eiði brought his furs around Lily, his brown eyes full of concern. She smiled gratefully at him and tugged his cloaks tighter around her. Dio was swinging his staff around, his practiced hands twirling it with a graceful power. Rava took in a slow breath, her pride and excitement swelling with her chest. She looked to the sky.
The stars are blinking out now.
Indeed they are, young one.
Rava snapped her head around, face to face with Elder Rowani. Rava scrambled into a salute, and then immediately fell to a knee.
Elder Rowani, you honor me with your presence.
You honor me with yours, my fledgling.
Rava lifted her head, her eyes level with Rowani's, who crouched before her. Rava quickly scooted backward. Rowani laughed.
Do you fear me, Rava?
Rava averted her gaze and furrowed her brow slightly. It wasn't a question she expected.
I do not.
Oh? Then why do you seem so timid?
I respect you, though, and forgive me for saying this,
Rava looked straight at Rowani as she continued.
even the most powerful of beings have weaknesses. Everything can hurt. Everything can be fragile.
Rowani's velvet eyes widened, and then softened as a smile crept across her plump lips. She brought a hand to Rava's forehead and gave her a gentle pat. Rava felt her face burn.
Your intelligence is your greatest strength, Rava.
Thank you, Elder.
Rowani chuckled gently and moved her hand away, and Rava could finally breathe again.
Quite a unique journey staff you have, young one.
Rava raised her eyebrows and loosened her grip. She hadn't realized how forcefully she was grasping onto her staff.
Is that so, Elder Rowani?
The energy you give each other, it seems you're already extremely well bonded.
Rava sat up straighter, leaning closer to Rowani.
Are they all like this? All alive?
They are blessed by the elemental gods. They amplify your energy and your magics.
Rava's mouth parted as she stared at the elder warrior. Rowani brought forth her own staff from her back and held it forward. The white wood glimmered, swirling strands of silver filling the grooves of the designs.
Wow.
Rava sighed in wonder.
You can even see my element in mine. You all will be able to do the same someday.
Rava's mind raced with 1,000 questions, but no words came to her tongue. The elder warrior smiled and brought an arm toward Rava and stood with her. Fastening her staff to her back, she gave a wink and turned her head to the sky.
Time to go?
Indeed, young warrior.
Rava gave a deep bow to Rowani, who returned the courtesy. Rava went to gather her friends, who were all bonding with their staves. Lily sat cross-legged in the grass, holding her staff across her lap, murmuring quietly. Rava watched in a silent awe as Lily's golden staff glowed in her hands with every whispered word. Rava bent and brought a hand to Lily's shoulder.
Lily. Yes?
Lily opened her eyes, and Rava gave her a determined nod. Lily stood, her gray gaze as fierce as Rava had ever seen it.
I'll wait at the edge of the path.
Rava gave Lily a grateful smile and went to fetch the boys. They stood in the clearing before the Vættrpath, staves in hand, facing one another. Rava picked up her pace.
Don't fight. Don't be idiots.
She jumped in between them, then realized they both had their eyes closed and were focusing their energy. Rava breathed a sigh of relief.
Eiði, Dio.
Dio opened his eyes first.
Are we going yet?
Right now.
Yes!
Dio began sprinting to where Lily stood, waiting for them. Eiði took a step toward Rava.
How are you feeling?
Rava shot him a confused look.
You, of all people, asking how I'm feeling?
The blonde-haired boy shoved Rava's shoulder lightly. She giggled.
I'm scared, but I'm ready to face that fear.
She looked toward the Vættrpath and smiled at Dio, who ran circles around a very still Lily. She felt a hand on her back and looked up at Eiði, who was gazing at the disappearing stars.
We'll be with you, every step.
He turned his head to her, his brown eyes gleaming.
Now, come on. Dio's going to run off without us if we take too long.
Eiði leaned in close to Rava's face. Her blue eyes widened. He gave her a devilish grin. Eiði pinched her nose and took off running.
Hey!
She raced after, their laughter filling the valley. Once caught up with the other three, Rava took a calming breath of crisp air.
Children,
The teens turned around at Yorvin's voice, met with all 5 elders. The young warriors instantly fell to their knees.
steady yourselves.
Bataje's deep voice rattled Rava's head.
Take care, not only of yourself, but of each other. Work together.
She couldn't help but smile at her grandmother's words.
Are you ready?
Yes, elders!
Then with our blessing, rise and take the Vættrpath.
The teens all slowly brought themselves to their feet. Rava looked up the steep dirt path, run smooth by hundreds of generations of warriors. The brown-haired girl took a reverent step forward and felt a burst of wind across her face. She lifted her head to it, enjoying the sudden gale, marking her welcome to the journey.
I feel you, dearest gods. I am ready.
Once out of view, Rava and her friends began sprinting up the path, shouting in their exhilaration. Dio led the pack, closely followed by Eiði. Rava and Lily ran side by side, enjoying the cool winds that played on their faces. Rava's breath burned delightfully in her lungs, and with every exhale, she let out a laugh.
You all are way too slow.
Dio, you're too fast! Come on, Lily! We can't let them beat us. Right.
Rava grinned at Lily and tilted her head toward the boys, and then picked up her pace. Lily's brow scrunched deeply as she tried to keep up. The 4 of them flew up the path, weaving about each other, chasing their destinies. After all the stars blinked out of sight, the teens began to slow their pace, exhausted. They traveled forth in silence, the reverence settling into them as they began their journey in earnest. As the sun began to creep over the horizon, Rava turned to look out from the cliff. She slowly walked to the edge, overlooking the northern seas that sparkled below the dawn's light. Gazing back to where they'd come from, the fog had burned away, leaving the trail visible. The valley looked forever far away, and when Rava strained her ears, she could only hear the occasional child's voice or clang of the blacksmith's tools from Clan Gyala.
Are you wanting to turn back already?
Rava looked up at Dio, who stuck his tongue out at her.
You're so mean.
Well, do you?
Do you?
Of course not.
Dio stamped his staff into the ground powerfully, and his voice thundered gleefully.
I can't wait to be a true warrior.
I think all of us are excited, Dio.
Lily gently nudged his side with her staff. His green eyes narrowed as he hissed in pain.
Ah, Lily, that hurt.
Huh? I barely touched you.
As Dio and Lily bickered, Eiði made his way over to the edge of the cliff and sat, his legs dangling over the side. Rava gave a start at his absolute bravery and gave him a curious look as he closed his eyes with a smile and lifted his head to the sun. Rava carefully made her way beside him, her heart nearly leaping from her chest. The gales that seemed so playful before felt as though they were tugging her downward, and she couldn't help but grip onto Eidu's arm for balance.
How are you so steady sitting like this?
I'm at peace when I'm with the sun.
Huh? What do you mean?
Eiði drew in a full breath and gave a relaxed sigh. He raised his hand up to the sky, his brown eyes twinkling with wonder.
My father told me that there's power in the sun.
Rava eased her tense body as Eiði began his answer, his voice deep and warm.
How it lights the whole world, how all the plants grow high to reach it. I think that's a special thing, Rava. A very special thing. I'm always happy when sunlight kisses my face.
Rava giggled as she looked at him. He seemed so still, yet so radiant, looking out at that sea.
Yeah, I think there is power in it.
Suddenly, Rava heard a yelp, and she and Eiði jumped up, whirling around.
Lily?
Dio, you jabbed at me way too hard.
Lily was clutching her arm, shaking slightly.
Dio, what did you do?
I didn't do anything. She poked me, so I did it back.
Lily's pretty face contorted into one of frustration. Dio stamped his foot hard into the dirt.
Why are you trying to hurt each other?
We're not. Look, Rava, I only poked her this hard.
He softly pushed his journey staff into Rava's shoulder.
Oh, really? Ah!
Rava cried out as her shoulder began to burn. She started trembling and dropped her own staff to the ground, clutching her arm.
Rava!
Oh no.
Through blue slits, Rava saw Lily scamper off.
Rava, what's wrong?
Dio knelt, bringing his hands to her shoulder.
I think...
Rava could barely speak. She was cringing so hard from the pain. Dio gently moved her hand aside and slipped her cloak off. Her white sleeve was dotted with red.
What?
That's impossible!
Rava grit her teeth and stood.
I'm fine. It was just surprising.
The three of them looked around.
Lily?
Eiði brought a hand up.
Lily's chasing your staff before it rolls off the cliff.
Rava stiffly took a step forward, and another, and another. Then, all at once, it hit her. Grimacing through the pain, she started sprinting after Lily.
Rava!
No, Lily, don't touch it.
Rava's scream was hoarse, and barely more than a whisper. She ran harder. Lily bent down to grab the black staff. Rava leapt forward with all her might. Screams filled the air as the morning sun shined brightly across the mountainside.